Hello, or as we say here in College Station, Texas, howdy, I'm Crosby. Welcome to the first video of our Environmental Awareness video series. This video is brought to you by the Bush Education Team at the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library and Museum in College Station, Texas. The theme today is the Clean Air Act and its importance to humans and various living species, specifically birds. The Clean Air Act was established in 1963 and reformed by President George H.W. Bush in 1990. His impact on the environment has been crucial in saving thousands of human and wildlife lives. In this video, we will look deeper into what pollution and acid rain are, the Clean Air Act and what it protects, and different types of ducks. We will also have an activity that shows how small and large bird wingspans can be. They can be much larger than most human armspans, which you will see today as you compare your own armspan to various birds' wingspans. Last, we will have an amazing craft which will allow you to create a 3D diagram of the 4 different types of clouds. So thank you for joining us, and we hope that you enjoy the video. Now here's our friend Tyler with today's lesson.
Howdy friends, I'm Tyler from the George and Barbara Bush Foundation. For today's lesson, we'll be talking about clean air and why President George H.W. Bush's Clean Air Act of 1990 is important to both us and birds. But before we discuss the Clean Air Act, we need to understand what pollution and acid rain are. Pollution is when the environment is contaminated with chemicals, different types of waste, or other substances that are harmful to the earth. There are 3 main types of pollution: water, up top, land, shown in the picture to the left, and air, to the right. Some examples of water pollution are when humans dump their garbage and sewage into the rivers, lakes, ponds, and oceans. Sometimes even factories will dump poisonous chemicals or oils into the waters. You can see sewage leaking into the river in the picture shown to the right. Water is uniquely vulnerable to pollution. Water is known as the universal solvent and is able to dissolve more substances than any other liquid on Earth. Water pollution can also be in the form of runoff, as waste from farm animals and fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides will drain into the rivers and lakes. Sewage carries pathogens that can end up in our drinking water supplies and swimming areas. Pictured here is the runoff of fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides from nearby farms. If you look closely, you can see the dead trees, and how wet and dead even the ground is. Water pollution is bad because it harms fish and plants that live in water. Nutrient pollution, caused by excess nitrogen and phosphorus in water, is the #1 threat to water quality worldwide and can cause algal blooms. Algal blooms are a toxic soup of blue-green algae that can be harmful to people and wildlife. Picture to the right is an algal bloom, a toxic soup of blue-green algae that can be harmful to people and wildlife. You can see just about every portion of this image is covered in a green, bluish-green soup. You can see all the different yellowish green colors lurking in there. An example of land pollution is throwing trash like plastic bottles and containers on the ground. This is known as littering. Approximately 362 million pieces of litter accumulate on Texas roads every year. Recyclables, such as beverage containers and paper, make up to 25% of litter on Texas roads. And the picture to the right is common litter that you can find in your trash can at home. From fast food, you see styrofoam, shopping bags, plastic Coke cans, and the like. Land pollution makes the ground look dirty, and it can also destroy the habitats and homes of animals. Birds also may mistake plastic for food and eat things that are harmful to their health. In our picture to the right, we have a bird seemingly living amongst trash. There could be anything here, food to non-food, that the bird will mistake and eat, both of which are harmful to his health. Air pollution can come from various things. These include volcanoes, smoke from wildfires, and industrial chemicals. Most of the air pollution comes from burning fossil fuels. Pictured at top is a volcano erupting. You can see lava flowing down the left side of it. And our picture below is of three factories. So you can see the smokestacks up top producing black smoke. Fossil fuels are natural substances that are formed from very old organisms. Some examples of fossil fuels are coal, oil, and natural gas. If we look in the diagram below, we can see how coal was formed. Before the dinosaurs, many giant plants died in swamps. Over millions of years, the plants were buried under water and dirt. Heat and pressure turned the dead plants into coal. These chemicals, smoke, and gases are harmful to the lungs of all animals, including humans and birds. Inhaling these chemicals may cause health conditions such as cancer and asthma. Air that has smog in it is hard to see in. It also may make it confusing for birds to fly. Picture to the right is of Cairo, Egypt. You can see just how poor the air quality is, the smog. You can hardly see to the end of the picture, those buildings in the distance behind the palm trees. Air pollution also causes acid rain. When all of the chemicals, gases, and smoke rise into the air, they come back down on the earth as rain. This is very damaging to all life on earth, including birds who have to fly in acid rain. In the acid rain pathway picture, we have starting at 1, vehicle and industry emissions. At 2, the clouds are soaking up said emissions. We have 3 different bullet points for 3. We see snow to the right, acid snow, that is, acid rain right next to it, and at the far left, more acid rain. The fourth and most important is the runoff. You can see acid rain hitting the trees absorbing the water down to the roots, and those things running off into the ground and the nearby waterway. Air pollution also has increased global warming. In total, air pollution is why the Clean Air Act is important and why President George H.W. Bush emphasized clean air when he was president. You can see in the picture to the right is a statue of our first president, George Washington. Look at the effects of acid rain. The Clean Air Act was established in 1963 during the presidency of Lyndon B. Johnson. This act was the first of its kind. It was one of the first environmental protection acts in the United States. This act created the funding for research on air pollution so that the government could effectively clean up the air in the United States. You can see President Lyndon B. Johnson to the right. In 1970, the Clean Air Act was reformed in the presidency of Richard Nixon. To reform something means to edit. Cars burn gasoline or diesel, and industries burn various chemicals. After these chemicals are burnt, they are released into the air. This is known as emissions. Congress made sure that there were national laws for industrial and car emissions of air pollutants. These laws set guidelines to reduce air pollution. Here is a picture of a community bus without emission standards, producing a long trail of black smoke. In 1990, the Clean Air Act was reformed again by Congress and signed into law by President George H.W. Bush. The amendments, or added laws, were created to reduce 4 threats to the environment. The first is acid rain. The second is air pollution in highly populated areas like cities. The third is toxic air emissions from vehicles and industries. And the fourth is stratospheric ozone depletion. Stratospheric ozone depletion is when harsh air pollutants destroy the ozone layer that protects the Earth's surface from the sun's ultraviolet radiation. The amendments also added new and innovative ways to reduce air pollution to protect all living beings on Earth. Here is George H.W. Bush with his wife Barbara. In 2010, President Barack Obama's administration reported that an estimated 160,000 lives were saved because of the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act also assisted with over 100,000 avoided hospital visits just in 2010. The act reduced the amount of bronchitis and asthma cases, which stem from air pollution. From 1970 to 2010, there was a decrease of 60% in air pollution because of the Clean Air Act. That's amazing. The statistics really show the importance of President Bush's Clean Air Act of 1990.
You can see in the graph to the right, produced by the Obama administration, the declining national air pollutant emissions.
Overall, the Clean Air Act is important because it allows for all life forms on Earth which rely on air to thrive. Its goal is to reduce harsh pollutants which severely affect living organisms, including ducks, which we will now discuss.
Here's a fun litter of ducks with sunglasses, enjoying the sun, I hope.
In the United States, there are two forms of ducks, dabbling ducks and diving ducks. Dabbling ducks are also known as puddle ducks. They live mainly in shallow water or flooded fields and marshes. There are 12 major types of dabbling ducks, some of which are mallards, wood ducks, cinnamon teal, and green-winged teal ducks.
In our chart to the right, you can see two columns of ducks, the aforementioned cinnamon teal, as well as blue-winged and green-winged teal. And there can be anything from golden eye, greater salop, black duck, ruddy, bufflehead. The biggest of the bunch being the common merganser.
Dabbling ducks eat by either skimming the water with their necks extended or tipping in their bodies headfirst into shallow waters to eat water plants, larvae, and insects. When dabbling ducks take flight, they spring into the air from the water instead of running on the surface to gain speed. This is a very fast motion.
Here's a dabbling duck in the water. You can see he's just extending his neck and having a look about what to eat, perhaps looking for some water plants, larvae, or insects.
Dabbling ducks vary in migration patterns by species. We will focus on the mallard migration pattern. Mallards begin their journeys from Canada and end up in the Midwestern United States and the Southern United States during the winter.
A picture to the right is a map of North America. We can see that dabbling ducks breed in the northern part, mostly Canada and the northern states, year-round. And with fair weather, they live in middle America. And as it gets colder in our hemisphere, the ducks complete their migration going south where it is much warmer.
The other type of duck found in the United States is known as the diving duck. They are also known as sea ducks. These ducks usually live in large lakes and rivers, which are deep, as well as ocean coasts and inlets.
A picture to the right here is a diving duck. You can see he's prospecting for some food right now.
Diving ducks dive underwater to get their food. They usually eat seeds, water plants, fish, insects, mollusks, and crustaceans.
Here's a diving duck fully submerged underwater. You can see he's swimming close to the riverbed, the waterbed. He's definitely looking for mollusks or a sort of crustacean.
When diving ducks take flight, they have to patter or run across the surface of the water to gain speed and take off, like a plane.
So here is a picture of a diving duck. You can see he's running across the water, and you've got 4 little splash marks along his trail where his feet have touched. A couple more, and he will begin to flap his wings and take off.
The diving ducks that live in the northern sections of North America tend to be migratory birds, while the diving ducks that live in the southern parts of the North America usually do not migrate.
Here's a picture of a typical V formation that you see for migratory birds. In this instance, we have ducks migrating south for the winter.
Now we will talk about the feathers of a duck. All ducks have feathers, but did you know that there are 3 types of feathers they all have? Ducks have contour feathers, which act as an outer shell to help their bodies and keep them warm and safe from moisture and wind.
A picture to the right here is of a duck. You can see he got a little bit more wet than anticipated, kind of freaking out a little bit. He's going to try and probably shake above water now and dry off.
Ducks also have flight feathers, which help ducks fly. These feathers help support a duck's weight while flying.
Here's a picture of a duck with wings extended. On each wing, there are 8 minor feathers and 10 major feathers, minor being close to the body and major being closer to the tip.
Lastly, ducks have down feathers, which is an inner layer of feathers that traps warm air against their bodies. This keeps their bodies insulated and warm.
Here's a picture of a down feather zoomed in.
Down feathers are incredibly soft. Here's a fun fact. Before sleeping bags were stuffed with artificial insulators, duck and goose down feathers were used to keep the sleeping bags warm.
A picture to the right is of a campground with numerous sized tents.
Did you know that ducks also have waterproof feathers? Ducks produce oil in their glands near their tails, which coat their feathers with waterproof oil so that they can live primarily on the water.
Here's a beautiful duck with a glowing red eye and lots of white stripes all over his body.
Now that we have completed talking about the different types of ducks and their feathers, it's time to do an activity that discusses bird wingspans.
Thanks, Tyler. That was some great information. I really thought the sleeping bag fun fact was interesting. I hope you did too. Did you know that most male ducks are silent and actually only a few ducks actually quack? They have various different calls, but only a few of them actually quack. With that being said, we will be moving on to other various birds and their wingspans. Our friend Santiago will now take over.
Howdy, my name is Santiago, and I'm here to teach you a little bit about wingspans. In previous lessons, I believe you covered clean air, and that's just how clean or smoggy the air is. Birds really love clean air, right? And you've probably seen a couple birds during your lifetime, right? Maybe a pigeon, maybe an eagle, a hawk, who knows? But you can probably tell there's some big birds and there's some small birds, right? Now, you're probably thinking, well, how big is big and how small is small, right? When we talk about a big bird, what makes it big? So when we talk about a big bird or small bird, we're normally talking about a big wingspan or a small wingspan. And the wingspan is just the distance from the left side of the bird to the right side of the bird. Now, humans are a little similar in that we have an arm span, not wingspan. We can't fly, of course, but we do have an arm span, and that's just the distance from the tip of our middle finger to the tip of our right middle finger. So left to right, and I'll show you when I shrink down like this. And so you might be wondering, well, that still doesn't help me sort of visualize how big something is or how small something is, right? My arm span might be different than yours. I might be bigger or smaller than you are. So how can I tell? Well, we can use something called an inch to help us out. And an inch is just something we use to measure, similar to, and you've probably seen some of these before, a ruler, right? And a ruler just has a lot of inches lined up together, right? So it's a lot easier to measure with this instead of going inch by inch. But if you ever do want to measure something by inches, you can always use your pointer finger. That's this one or this one. And you curl it like this. And then the distance from this joint to that joint will be 1 inch. And so now you have a measurement for an inch, right? And if you have a ruler, you can also use that to measure. So we're going to measure some wingspans later on, but for right now, I want you to measure your own arm span. And that's just, again, the distance from middle finger to middle finger. And I'm going to show you how to do it with a ruler. You can do this with anything as long as it's used to measure right. You can use your little finger if you want, but it's a lot faster, I think, if we use the ruler, right? So we're going to start with the tip of this hand and go down like this. And then we'll have to straighten out. Oh no. And so that's 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, and it doesn't have to be exact as long as you kind of know 4 foot how big you are. 5 foot and 6 foot, and that's going to be 6 foot minus 1 inch. And so if you hear me say foot at all, that's just 12 inches lined back to back to back, or one ruler. And so that's roughly how big my arm span is. If you can take a moment, I'd love for you to do it as well. All set? Alrighty, let's keep going. So now I'm going to show you a little graphic, and it's going to have a bunch of different birds, some big birds, some small birds, right? I want you to pick your 2 favorite ones, right? For me, I really like the bald eagle. I just sort of love it. I also love the robin. I think it's a very cool bird. And so I chose those 2, and on the graphic, it shows you the name, the little wingspan chart, as well as how big the wingspan is in inches. And that's just there to help you measure it out on something. And we'll get into that, right? So we talked about big birds and small birds. Now we know how to measure them, right? We have our feet, our inches, so we can measure how big they are and sort of see, oh, it's about this big is that bird. But now it's going to be a little difficult with some of the bigger birds that are 91 inches, for example, for the bald eagle, because I don't have a lot of rulers. So what I'm going to do instead to sort of model out my bird is use, and you can probably tell from the background, printer paper. Now printer paper is 11 inches long. So that's from this end to that end. And you can measure it if you want with a ruler to double check, but that's just the way it is most of the time. And so once you have some printer paper, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be printer paper, you can get some string, you can get almost anything that's long, right? You can use your little inch, or you can use a ruler to measure out the bird, right? So for example, I said the bald eagle was 91 inches, right? So now I have to use this printer paper to measure out 91 inches long. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, if you think about it, this is 11 inches, right? So if I just line up another piece of printer paper, I have 22 inches, right? So I can keep doing this and doing this till I get 88, and then I can add a couple more inches, right? And I'll do that, but instead of using a whole sheet of printer paper, it's a little wasteful to do that. We're going to go ahead and use this one piece and keep folding it to get little strips that are still 11 inches long. The way we'll do this is by using hot dog style. So we'll take the piece of paper like a hot dog and we'll bend it. Just like this. So now you have a little hot dog, right? This was the piece of paper. We bent it like this, hot dog. And now what you can do is, if you're okay with just using 2 little strips, you can stop here. You can bend it the other way. So let's say it's bending downward like a hot dog, right? We bend it up now against where it wants to bend. Just like this. So now it can bend either way, right? And once we have it like this, we can put it flat against the table, take our hands like this, or just simply start ripping at the little crease. Now it's a little harder without the table, right? If you put it against the table and just sort of put your hands like this and sort of move the 2 pieces apart like this, it's a lot easier. But for me to show you, I'm going to do it like this up here. Right? Boom. And there, from that 1 piece of printer paper, now we have 2. And both of them are still 11 inches long, so I can line them up back to back, right? And with all that said, now you can look back at the chart that I gave you, choose your 2 favorite birds, and then use the pieces of paper or string and a ruler, as well as maybe your finger if you want to use the inch method, and measure out how big the birds are. And then you can see who's the biggest and who's the smallest. And you can also throw in your arm span in there and see, okay, I am smaller than an eagle, but I'm bigger than a robin. And that's what I did back here. I'm going to go ahead and show you a picture just because I think it'll be better, but it's the same thing back there. I have the eagle at the very top rack at 91 inches. It was crazy huge. I didn't even think about how big it was compared to me. It's almost, if you can tell over here, it's almost 2 feet bigger than me. That's crazy. And you also have a robin, which was a little smaller than I thought it would be, honestly. It's about 2 feet, so about 3 robins make my arm span. 3 of their wingspans, that is. And now's probably a good time to start talking about why big birds have big wingspans and why small birds have small wingspans, right? And so we can talk about travel distance, and that's a really big thing. So an eagle, for example, has a really big wingspan, just like we saw in the diagram, right? And so that means that it really loves to travel. And most of the time, eagles are really, really fast. And so they use these really big wings to travel very long distances. And robins have smaller wings because they don't necessarily need to travel as much. They can go a shorter ways, right? They only need to move around from tree to tree, maybe go a couple miles, but they don't necessarily fly a long distance. And so that's why whenever you see really big birds and they're flying in the sky, like for example, ducks, hawks, eagles, they'll normally be traveling really, really far because they have a very big wingspan, so they can travel very, very far. And so now, hopefully, you learned a thing or two about how big a big bird is based on its wingspan, how small a small bird is based on its wingspan, and why big birds have big wings, right, to travel further, and small birds have smaller wings to travel smaller distances than an eagle, for example. So hopefully you learned a thing or two, had a fun time doing so. I know I did. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thanks, Santiago. I can't wait to go and measure my own arm span. I'm curious to see which bird wingspan is close to my arm span. I think we've had some really great talks today about birds. However, I think we should also discuss the sky, since birds fly in the sky. Now this will be interactive, so get ready to do some crafts. Our friend Ivy will now take over to show you how to make amazing 3D model clouds.
Hello and welcome to the cloud chart craft section of our video. My name is Ivy and I'll be working with you today. So in this craft, we are going to be focusing in on the core 4 clouds. So these were the original 4 that got named that help inspire the identification and naming of 27 more clouds. So to begin, on the right hand of your screen, there is a picture of what we are making today. I used blue paper for mine, but you can use any color paper that you have on hand. There are 4 different clouds, and we're going to be covering cirrus, cumulus, stratus, and nimbus clouds. Now, I know those are a bunch of fancy Latin words, but no worries, we're going to break those down to understand what they mean all the better. Now, in the bottom right corner of my example picture, there is a nimbus cloud, and it is gray. So if you're working on white paper, what you can do is you can take the toilet paper, these are made with toilet paper, you can actually color the toilet paper with a marker or a crayon, the same way I did with the nimbus cloud, but you can use sunset colors, so it'll really pop off your page. So just take a moment and think about the prettiest sunset you've ever seen. Got it in your head? Okay, pick out one of the colors from that prettiest sunset, and you can color on your toilet paper or paper towel and make it that color, so if you're working on a white piece of paper, it'll pop really well. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the materials we're going to need for today's craft. So first thing first, we're going to need a pencil or a pen so we can take our notes, write down the names, the important things. Then we'll need a piece of paper in any color. Like I said, I use blue, but you can use white or just anything you have on hand. Then for the clouds, you're going to need either paper towel or toilet paper. In my example, I use toilet paper, but just use what you have. Then you're going to need a way to stick your cloud to the paper, and for that I would recommend stick glue. But you can also use liquid glue or tape. Lastly, if you want to add some color to your cloud, such as our nimbus cloud, which will be gray, or you're wanting to make some sunset color clouds, please have some markers or crayons on hand. So with that laid out for us, let us go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to do is fold our piece of paper. So please put it in front of you, and we are going to fold it hot dog style. So in my picture, I have on the left-hand side, I have a full piece of paper that's unfolded, and I have some black dotted lines going down the middle. That is our fold line. So we're going to take the long side of the paper and fold it against the other long side of the piece of paper. So now we have a skinnier, long, hot dog style folded piece of paper. Also, while we're in this section, let me also note, if at any time you need more time to complete a step, just pause the video and press play when you're ready. Okay, so we have folded the long ends together and we have made our hot dog fold. So let's do the next one. And for this one, we are going to take our paper and we're going to take the short edge and fold it down to the short edge. Again, I do have a picture on the screen, and this one has the black dotted fold line in a horizontal, and on the right hand side of the picture is what your final result should look like. So you're taking the short edge and you are folding it down to the other short edge. Okay? All right, and that's all the folding we need to do. You are good. Next, I need you to please unfold your piece of paper so it's laying flat, but you can still see the creases where the fold was. And you should have 4 sections. Okay, so you've divided your paper into 4 sections. And we're going to go ahead and label each of these sections 1 through 4. So each section should get their own number. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can label it however you would like. I went from upper left, upper right, lower left, lower right. But again, number it how you would like to. Okay, so we're going to start with section 1 of our page. And for this, we're going to focus on a cirrus cloud. So at the top, please write down the word cirrus. It is spelled C-I-R-R-U-S. Okay, so cirrus clouds are those wispy ones that kind of look like horsetails or sometimes little like spider wispies. They're the ones that are really high up in the sky. They're actually made of ice crystals because it's just so high up and so cold up there. And you can often see them before a hurricane system or some sort of big storm system starts coming in. So that's kind of like their weather indicator. So to make these clouds, what I need for you to do is please grab your toilet paper, paper towel. In my example, I use the toilet paper. And you're going to want a length that's about the size of your hand. So from the tip of your fingers to the bottom of your palm is a great measurement for how long you should tear off of the paper towel or toilet paper, okay? From the tip of your fingers to the bottom of your palm. All right, I need you to do this 3 times, okay? I want you to do this 3 times. So you're tearing off 3 strips of toilet paper or paper towel, okay? And good. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to twist these to make them more narrow. So here I have a picture example. On the top, I've twisted the toilet paper more. And on the bottom 2, I twisted it less. On the top one, it is narrower. And on the bottom 2, it is wider because I twisted it less. So really, it's artistically up to you how much you would like to twist your paper for your cloud. Next, we are going to add these strips onto our section 1 of the paper. So you're going to find they're going to unravel a little bit as you try to put them down. That's okay. Perfectly fine. Part of the process. Anyways, you're going to use your stick glue or your liquid glue, which only use a couple dots if you're using liquid glue, otherwise it'll be a mess. You can also use tape if you'd prefer. And please go ahead and put those on your page. In my example, I have it as 3 slightly squiggly lines going in a diagonal, and they're all slightly different lengths, but they're all facing the same direction. And that is how I made my cirrus cloud. So let's talk a little bit more about the cirrus. So cirrus is actually Latin for curl. And after you've finished placing your clouds as I speak, you can go ahead and take notes. You can copy down what I've written or write your own. But cirrus is the Latin word for curl. They are made of ice crystals, so you can write that down, or that they're super cold because it's super cold up way high where they are, and that they are high in the sky. The other thing I mentioned is they can come before hurricanes. So, not always, but they can be an indicator of that. Okay. Got all that? Paused if you need to? Okay. So the next one we're going to do together is cumulus. So please head over to section 2. In section 2, you're going to write the word cumulus. Cumulus is spelled C-U-M-U-L-U-S. So cumulus clouds are those big, white, fluffy clouds that you see, and they're considered a good fair weather indicator. So if you see these fluffy clouds and they have a good amount of space in between them, and you see this beautiful blue sky, you're having a good weather day. Okay, so let's go ahead and start making this cloud. So cumulus is actually the Latin word for heap. So like a heap of toys or a heap of ice cream. You can also have a heap of cloud, and that is where you get cumulus. So for this one, please take 1 or 2 squares of toilet paper, or tear yourself a good square size of paper towel. Grab your sticker of choice, whether that is using the glue, that stick or liquid, or tape. Okay, so you have your supplies. You're going to arrange the cloud on the page so it's poofy. So it's flat. It's going to be flat against the page on the bottom because cumulus clouds are flat on bottom, and it's going to be poofy in the center. In fact, here, let me show you a side view. So as you can see in this picture, I have pasted the toilet paper, in this case, flat onto the paper, but it is creating a heap on the page. So it has that 3D effect. So go ahead and please do that. So the fun thing about these core 4 clouds is once you become familiar with them, you can actually start combining different clouds to describe more things. Like you can have a cumulus nimbus cloud, and we'll go over nimbus later. All right, so go ahead once you've done that, and please take some notes about your cumulus cloud. So they are heaps. They're considered detached clouds because they're not touching. They're just different heaps in the sky. They're flat on bottom for our view, though on our project we've done the top-down view, so like you were in an airplane or a bird. They are our fair weather clouds, so when we see them, we're having a good weather day, as long as they're white. And yeah, they're flat on bottom. Those are the main things we need to know. So, ready to move on? Excellent. Okay, so our next cloud is going to be stratus. Stratus is actually a layer, and we've all engaged with the stratus cloud before anytime we've walked through fog. Fog is actually a cloud that is touching the ground. Anyway, so for section number 3, you're going to write the word stratus. It's spelled S-T-R-A-T-U-S. So for this one, you're going to take toilet paper or paper towel and you're going to create layers on your page. So please go ahead and do so. On my screen, I took 2 layers of paper and then I just glued them on top of each other. So as you're doing that, let me tell you a bit more. So stratus clouds are those days when you're looking up and all you see are clouds, just a full sheet of cloud. You can actually have different types of stratus clouds. You can actually have cumulus clouds that are all touching and have all joined together to become a stratus. And these are the days that are a bit more gray, they're dark, they're dull. Occasionally, you'll have a bit of blue sky peeking through, and that's considered a broken stratus. Okay, so as you're doing this, once you finish gluing, taping your stratus layers into place, please go ahead and make sure to take those notes down as well of layer, the word in Latin, and then an example is fog. All right, so we zipped through that. We're experts at what we're doing now. So we are ready for the last section in our chart, and that is nimbus. So this is section 4, and it is spelled Nimbus. Okay, so nimbus is a Latin word, and this time it means rain. They're not just limited to rain, it can be any form of precipitation. Can you think of some other examples of precipitation? Go ahead and write it down next to the word nimbus. What other examples of precipitation can you think of? Okay, so snow, hail, of course, rain, water, things like that. Okay, excellent. So for this one, we're going to have a bit of fun with it. Go ahead and take your toilet paper, paper towel, and go ahead and take your marker. So you might have already been coloring your paper to make those sunset colors, but in this case, please take a gray or any really dark color that you may own and start coloring on the cloud paper. Now, in my example, you're going to see that I have some paper towel behind it, and that's because I found it bled through onto my desk. You're welcome to do that as well. Put some paper behind it and kind of deal with that. Okay, so I just kept coloring on it until the whole piece of paper was covered in gray. Then, just like how I did my cumulus clouds, I kind of bunched it together from the edges, created that poofy shape, and then I glued it in place. So in this case, I'm making a cumulonimbus cloud for my example. And then because it is my example piece, I went ahead and wrote out the whole word. So I'm going to spell it for you, cumulonimbus. It is Cumulonimbus. And it's a compound, so it means we've brought together two words you're already familiar with, which is cumulus and nimbus. Again, cumulus means heap, and nimbus means rain. So when we see a cumulonimbus cloud, we're seeing a heap of rain. So here is an example of my completed chart. Yours hopefully looks something similar. I'm sure it's going to have its own artistic flourishes though and be just beautiful. So this chart, feel more than welcome to take it outside with you during the day when you can go ahead and see what the clouds look like. Maybe you have a clear day. Maybe you're going to see some of those wispy cirrus clouds. Maybe you see a stratus cloud and you have no sun. Just take the time and go out and explore. Well, thank you for joining me in the craft video today. I hope you enjoyed.
So now that we're wrapping up, we talked about multiple things: the different types of pollution, acid rain, the Clean Air Act, and President George H.W. Bush's positive impact on the environment, the different types of ducks in the United States, bird wingspans and human armspans, and the 4 major types of clouds. From all of us at the Bush Education Team at the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library and Museum in College Station, Texas, we thank you for joining us today. For more great content created by our education team, please visit www.bush41.org/education/overview. Thanks.